So I know it's been a while since my last video. I kind of got a new job recently and I've mostly just been busy getting the hang of that. And I know I was also finishing up the project that was going on over the summer, which I can kind of now briefly bring up and show you. So what I did was I got a new guitar and I got some custom art done from it by an artist up in New York called Forest Gotham Artwork, who you can check out her work on Instagram. Also did these like two pictures in the background. Yeah, here is the guitar. It's got some this is just like Sharpie and it still looks amazing. So yeah, I took a few trips going back up and forth to make sure it got done. Especially carrying this heavy thing across New York because I did not take a car. I relied on public transportation or hitching a ride with friends. But now that it's done, I'm like really happy with the results. And if you're ever thinking, ooh, I wish I could have like my own custom guitar art, I'd recommend, why don't you go find an artist, see if they're willing to do it, because you can get a nice custom thing done, and depending on the artist, it might not even be like that super expensive. Anyway, on to the topic of the video. So I've been seeing, particularly on Reddit a lot, with stuff reopening a little bit after COVID, a lot of people are asking, oh, where are the goth events? Where can I meet other goths in my area? So I decided I'll do like a kind of basic intro video, kind of like talk about where to find these events, what to expect, how to make friends there, because I'm sure a lot of people, they want to go there to be social and not just sit there in the corner by themselves. So I'm going to cover a little bit of all of that, just to kind of give a little bit of my own background with this. So I generally go out to events quite often. Try to go to most of the ones in Baltimore and like a few in DC too. Sometimes I'll go to different cities and go to other events. Like I mentioned, went to Red Party this summer up in New York. Part of an excuse for also getting this guitar done was I got to hang around New York a bit. Went all the way down into like middle of Virginia to find events. So I've like been to quite a few. I can't speak for how every single one is, but I know at least when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm not just talking, oh, just how it is at this club. It's gonna hopefully somewhat universal. So anyway, this is an intro thing for how to get involved in your local goth and industrial scene. If you're looking for like basic 101 about goth stuff, this probably isn't the video for you. But I can recommend going on to Cemetery Confessions. They've got like a lot of good resources on that. And maybe I might do like a better intro video on everything in general later. But this one's just going to be about events. So anyway, let's get to the point because I don't want this video to take too long. So first thing I'm going to talk about is how to find events. So the best way to find events by far is to be on Facebook. I know a lot of people don't like Facebook, but mostly it's just the best place to post it. Like I've tried posting information about events like on Reddit or Discord or all these other places. Next to no one ever bites. I don't really see any extra attendance from them, but Facebook, people do tend to get the attention. As for what to expect, it's gonna depend on the night. So in some places, actually, one thing I also want to mention, because I feel like sometimes you expect, okay, so I'm in the middle of nowhere. There can't be possibly be any goth events where I live. And sometimes you'd actually be surprised. So, for example, I mostly learned this through Facebook, but also like going to some of them. Virginia is actually full of lots of events. They've got some in Lynchburg, Roanoke, Charlottesville. I know if you're not in the United States or in the Virginia area, maybe these places don't make sense, but these are like small cities. They're not like big places. They've got like a ton of them in all these small places. I know I have a friend who recently moved to like Florida Panhandle, and she was actually surprised she was able to find an event that's happening this month. So don't like automatically assume you're not going to find anything, because there are like good events sometimes. Also, one thing I'm not going to recommend doing is asking on the internet at random, because I've seen people who, for example, I noticed on like the goth subreddit, someone asked, are there any events in New York City? And there was actually someone saying, no, there are no events in New York City. One of the biggest cities in the world. No goth events. None whatsoever. Or you have some people say, oh, there's not a lot and then they admit to not having been there in a few years. And both of those are wrong. Like, I'm not really involved much in the New York City scene, but I do see a little bit of what goes on there, and they have events. They have a lot of events because it's a big city. So don't just like take whatever you see on face value some stranger says on the internet either. They might not necessarily know what they're talking about. Anyway, actually going on to the expectations now. So one thing you're going to want to expect is different events might have like different sort of feels to them. So I know around here we've got some nights that are very still stuck in the 2000s a little bit, very agro-tech future pop. We got stuff that plays more like classic goth bands and classic industrial bands. We've got some events that aren't focused on dancing at all because they're in like dive bars where there's no real dance floor, but people still go to them. We've even got an event, which I was just showing you earlier, called Vanguard. They have video games, and they're really focused on the danceability part, but it's much more contemporary than some of the, like the more cyber-leaning clubs. And this will depend on your area. Some areas might have more uniformity in their events, but just because you've been to one event doesn't mean they're all going to be the same. All of them like have different like vibes and like crowds to them and stuff. One thing you probably should assume though is you're going to get a mix of goth and industrial and other stuff. No one really just like plays one strict genre the whole night. Usually they mix it up. Ideally, you've got a rough either 50-50 mix or at worst 30-70. I'd say at least 30-70 is like a good ratio if you're mixing genres at worst. Because like 30% is still like a good amount of goth tracks on a night, or a good amount of industrial tracks depending on what you're looking for. One thing to also expect is when DJs are playing the music, they're typically trying to like have a smooth flow of songs. So if you're hearing goth and you want to hear industrial, if you're hearing industrial and you want to hear goth, you might have to wait a little bit to hear the other one because they're going to like blend tracks that sound similar. So don't expect all of a sudden, oh, they're in the middle of playing like Comba Christ and then say, oh, I hope they play The Cure next, because that's usually not how the tracks are going to flow, unless it's a club that doesn't really care at all. And some don't, and that's fine too. Likewise, it might take them a while to get to your requests for the same reason. They got to like fit it in somewhere. So sometimes it's just like a matter of being patient. If they're currently not playing something you're liking, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. You can use that as an opportunity to go grab a drink, go take a step outside, get some fresh air, talk to people. Generally, you don't want to, unless you've got like a ton of energy, you're not going to be wanting to be dancing the entire night anyway. So it's okay if they don't play everything. You don't have to like everything they play. One thing that I can say positively about goth events is generally they're a little bit less creepy than like mainstream clubs. You're less likely to like get people just like putting their hands on you for no reason or whatever. I'm not going to say that it won't happen. It can happen. It's happened to me before, but it's generally a lot safer. You still want to be on your guard though. Just because they're safer than mainstream clubs doesn't mean they're entirely safe. You still want to do all the normal things you do when you're at a like club night. Make sure you're like watching your drinks. Don't leave them unattended. One thing that's important to keep in note is some bars and venues, they have like passwords if someone's bothering you or whatever, to like help call you an Uber or watch out for you or something like that. Oftentimes they're posted in the women's restroom, so that might be something to check when you get in there. And that's always good to keep in mind too. So one other thing also you want to expect is when you first go in, most people probably aren't just going to go up and talk to you and say, hey, let's be friends or whatever. That's generally not how it works. Because most people, they're off minding their own business. They're not going to necessarily want to talk to the first stranger they meet. But that doesn't mean you can't make friends later. Just don't expect to be like super popular your first night. And I'm not saying that necessarily you won't have people talk to you. It could happen. Just don't like make that huge number one reason you're going for and then get disappointed if that doesn't happen. As for other events, so like most events, they're going to be like shows or clubs. There are other types of events, like a lot of times people have like zoo days or picnics. Not all of these, however, are public, so you might need to be in the know to get invited or know about these. Like some of these are like private events. But going to clubs is how else you can meet people who are into the same stuff, who might want to do other things if you're like hit it off with people. So it's still worth going to clubs to meet people, even if you're not super big on going to clubs all the time. So yeah, this leads to the third part, which is how to make friends. So an important thing about this, also I should probably mention about the dress code thing too. So some venues have dress codes, some don't. Most of them usually just have something really basic like just wear black or don't look suspicious or whatever. And that's generally a good policy in general. You don't want to like go into a club like looking like a narc or whatever. It's going to put people at unease. Generally walking with a t-shirt and jeans is fine, but if you're like dressed up all nice like you would go to like some nightclubs, other nightclubs with dress codes, that might look a little off. Yeah. As for like meeting people, socializing, there's some important rules to go for that too. One is obviously don't assume everyone's going to want to talk to you when you go up to them. It doesn't hurt to go up and like be friendly to people, but make sure you're like reading body language, making sure they want to talk to you. Don't be up in their personal space. They seem uninterested, just leave them alone. Especially do not, I think I already said, don't be in people's face. That's very important. Because like that's a pet peeve of mine. Like there's some guys that'll just go up into the club and like be up all like blocking off almost your exit or whatever, trying to like get you to talk to them, and that's a no. Just don't do that. Yeah, there's some things to keep in mind also is just when you're going in, most people don't care about whatever music knowledge you have or how many bands you like or whatever. Most people just like care if you're like a decent person to hang with. So you might see like a lot of the ways interactions happen online with, oh, I know this X, Y, and Z about goth music. Like that's not gonna really impress people in real life. You're probably just gonna come off like either an asshole or clueless. So like mostly just stick to like normal socialization. Don't like try and bring up whatever hot topic, not the store, but like whatever like debate topic you just saw on the internet that causes flame wars. Just stick to like normal conversation. Good thing to talk to people about maybe is, if you're new, ask if there's anything else, any other events going on that you might not know about. Because people might know, you might learn about other stuff. And yeah, as you go more often, people are more likely to want to come up and talk to you because they'll be like, hey, I've seen you around this show and this club and that club. And they'll realize, this person might have something in common with me. And that's like happened to me quite a bit when I've like went to things. I've even had, for example, one night I was at, I actually finally got around to like talking to one of the DJs. They introduced themselves to me and they're like, hey, do you want to spin here sometime? I was like actually surprised why they're even like bringing that up, but it's like a small event. It was because they like saw me around all these other shows that they like going to, so they assumed, oh, you must have good music taste, because that's like the thing. You don't need to like brag about how cool your music taste or whatever it is. People will just assume you're into the same stuff at them because that's what these clubs are for. All right. One other thing that's important to know with like socializing and stuff is don't be afraid to go outside where people are smoking. You don't have to be a smoker yourself to like enjoy the outside part. That's generally the best place to have conversations because you can actually hear everyone, and that's where like a lot of people go to talk. It also gives you something to do if you're not like enjoying what's currently being played. You can like go off to the side and like go and talk to people while waiting for something else good to start playing. Is that like that's half the fun. Like people do go there for the music, but at least in my experience, a lot of people really go to socialize. Some people will just go to the clubs where their friends are, probably more so than they go to the clubs that play the music they like. So that's important to keep in mind as well. Like it's not just about the music, it's also about like the socializing aspect. Yeah, so also in regards kind of more the like non-club events, some of them are going to kind of be private. You need to be in the know. If for the bigger public ones, just keep in mind like a lot of those times the whole group you're going to be with might be a little bit scrutinized more. So your behavior in a cemetery picnic in private with your friends should probably be different than the one where the huge group of like the goth community decided, hey, let's reserve this place at this nice cemetery. You don't want to like behave the same way. You probably want to like be a little more careful so you don't get declined from going back the next year. Yeah, so just kind of summarize things up. If possible, do try and see if you can find events in your area. There are a lot more places with events than you would think. Don't be afraid to like make a burner Facebook account if that's what you got to do to find these places. Don't exclusively rely on Facebook either, just in case there are ones that aren't. Feel free to like ask people around once you've been to some if there's any others you don't know about. When you go into the event, make sure to have like reasonable expectations. Don't expect them to play like only songs you like or mostly songs you like necessarily. Don't expect everyone just to like rush to be your friend the first time you go in the thing. And when you're interacting with people, just be generally a pleasant person to be around. Don't be a dick. Don't be an obnoxious know-it-all. Just be pleasant to be around, and you should be able to at least make a few friends. Yeah, it's definitely important to like go out to these events because they give us all a public space to hang out in, to meet new people, to like have a easy way for everyone to get together because there's plenty of space. It's generally easier if there's a set time and everyone just goes there rather than trying to like organize stuff with your friends. Like me trying to do like a private party in my own house is so much more work than just like going to the club where all my friends are already going to be at. And yeah, that's about mostly all I got to say on the subject. Hopefully some of the people who didn't know much about the subject before can use this information, go out and find an event in their area and go have fun. And anyway, I got to actually get ready because I'm going to an event tonight. So I will see you in the next video, which hopefully won't be another few months till I make it.